Mr. Luca Faloni.
Good evening. So this will be a talk about people, choices, a bit of finance, penguins, and obviously Caribbean fishermen. I'll talk about the perfect allocation of human capital, which I believe should go to flow to the opportunities, to the jobs with the highest return on society. And I will use finance as an example of a sector which is probably playing a role in subtracting part of the talent and using it in activities that add less value, less tangible value to society. Let's start. So choices. We take them every day. Some of them are important, some of them are not. The fact about the important ones is that they actually affect not only us, but the people that surround us, and sometimes they affect the whole society. And the career choice, what we want to do in our life, is a typical example of one of those choices. It's so important, actually, that we are really serious when we take the decision, and we do it really consciously. We try to optimize an equation that has several variables, and they are different for each individual, and each individual gives different weight, different importance to those variables. So we basically want a job that we like, where we can make a lot of money, that give us career opportunities, that give us some learning opportunities, that has an impact on society, and a job that has a good lifestyle. So we try to optimize that equation, and based on the risk of each profession, and based on our preference of those variables, we try to pick the career choice that, based on our skills and what's available in the market, give us the highest expected value of that equation. So the fact that we take that decision based on our own personal value, so we choose the one that gives us the highest expected value, but that is different from the highest expected value for the society. So we might be in a situation in which all the individuals actually choose the profession which is best for them, but the society as a whole is actually having less value than it could have. And that is also true because money is such an important part of that equation. Money makes us do things that we wouldn't do otherwise if those options were not paying so much. And here the idea to analyze a bit further the impact on finance in the perfect allocation of capital, because finance is one of those professions, especially in certain geographies like the UK and the United States, that pays a lot, especially young people. And we can argue, we will see if it's adds value or not. So let's start. How we got to where we are. So finance, this chart illustrates finance in the last 150 years as a percentage of the GDP in the United States. You can see that 150 years ago, it was a very small industry. It was 1.5% of GDP. And it grew to 4% about 50 years ago because it was a support industry. It was supposed to help other parts of the economy. Then after the liberalization 30 years ago, the sector grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And the huge majority of the profit in the last 3 decades came actually from complex products that were not always used to help the rest of the economy, but sometimes were used just to speculate. So not always used to hedge risk, but also speculate. And according to economists, actually, finance, if it was only being an intermediary, which is what it's supposed to be, should be at least 2% less as a percentage of GDP. It's also a sector that pays a lot. So it's growing a lot, it's important, and it pays a lot. So for people that are new graduates from important schools, they can make 3 to 5 times in finance the amount of money that they would make in their own field. And also that salary grows exponentially year after year. So now, 50 years ago, if people wanted to become rich, they should have started their own company. Now they can just go to finance, stay in the industry for a long while, and they are sure they will become extremely rich. And that comes also with low risk compared to other professions. Like if you compare to entrepreneurship, which is really high risk, yes, you can make a lot of money in entrepreneurship, but actually it's risky and not many people make it. So, and also the way people make money in finance is based on short-term incentives. So they don't really care sometimes on the long-term value of what they're doing because they're paid the bonus into the short-term performance, which is not that good for the value they create for the society. According to economists, 40% of what people make in finance is unjustified based on the skills they have and on the risk of the profession. So we said the sector is really big and it's paying a lot. Now the question is, the sector is clearly attractive. So is it stealing talents from other industries where they maybe those talents would have had more value. Well, we said that in the last 30 years, finance grew very, very big, and the massive part of the profits came from very sophisticated products. So finance as an industry now needs skills from different fields. This needs skills from people that are good at science, computer, that are good in engineering. And it's hiring massively from those industries that it wasn't the case 50 years ago. So if we take Harvard, for instance, in 1970, 5% of the people who graduated from Harvard went into finance. 20 years later, that is 3 times that amount. And now it's much higher than that. If we take also the MIT, which as an institution, as a school, is supposed to grow to help students become important in the field of science and technology, we can also see that in the last 10 years, actually 20% of the students from MIT ended up into finance. So yes, finance is clearly able to attract talents from other fields. Is that a problem? If human capital was unlimited, that wouldn't be a problem. But that is not the case. In California, there is shortage of engineers. Same in Germany for chemical engineers. And also, that wouldn't be a problem if people that go to finance add a lot of value in what they're doing. So we need to analyze the question, is finance adding value? But first of all, we need to describe what is value. And I believe that as society, we value things that are not easy to capture in pure economic terms. They have social and economic impact, but they also environmental impact. So we need to use a broader definition of value. So, but however, yes, I believe that part of finance, the part is supposed to help the economy, support the economy. Yes, it's adding value. Finance has some very important task, which is to allocate the capital efficiently in the economy, to maintain the market liquid, to have financial markets that work efficiently. So that part, yes, it's really important. But I believe there is part of finance that in the last few decades grew out of that initial role and is also less adding value, less to the rest of the economy and is internal to finance. So many people just are speculating now. Hedge funds make a lot of money, like people like John Paulson make billions and billions in the last 3 years, but actually many of the markets where they traded were zero-sum gains. So now we have to think about what is the opportunity cost of the capital, of the human capital, which goes to finance. What could have done if they ended up in another profession? And there are some interesting studies out there that analyze that. Especially, there is an interesting study about the impact of finance on entrepreneurship done by the Kaufman Foundation in America. So that report argues that finance has a negative impact on entrepreneurship. It diminished the rate of entrepreneurship in the last few decades. But not only that, it's also saying that finance stole some of the best talents from entrepreneurship because it's hiring people that in some situation would have otherwise started their own business. Another important study was done by a foundation in UK called the New Economy, which analyzed the impact of different professions, taking into account the social impact also. So economic, social, environmental. And they analyzed some high-paying jobs and some low-paying jobs. Among the jobs that they analyzed in the high-paying, there was a city banker, an accountant, and people in advertisement. And guess what? Their finding is that people in the city bankers destroy 12 pounds of value for each pound of value they create. And same thing for more or less for advertisers. Tax accountants even much more because they help rich people to not pay tax. So, and the funny thing is that the value that is created by people that are making much less money than those professions, like people that work in recycling of waste and people that work like in the childcare, they actually create much more value than what they're paid. So going back to what we said at the beginning, is the optimization of our own personal interest the same as the optimization of the value of the society? It seems that it's not. So people that try to optimize their own equations, sometimes if they give too much importance to money, for instance, they end up doing things that are not that do not add too much value to society, especially tangible value. So what should the system incentivize? Would you rather have a system that incentivizes people to become the next John Paulson or the next Steve Jobs? Do you want a system that creates more city bankers rather than local entrepreneurs? A system that creates more speculators rather than people like Tom, that went to Antarctica after graduating in Oxford in biology to study penguins and of course, from that learn things about global warming. And of course, he could have gone to finance like many of his colleagues and make many times the amount of money that he is now making. So we've seen how probably the system of the allocation of human resources to the most efficient value-adding activity is not working properly. We've seen how probably finance is playing a role. It's of course not the whole problem, it's part of it, and it's difficult to quantify it, but of course it is worth to raise the issue. So now, if we want to correct a bit the system and make sure that the system allocates resources efficiently, human resources efficiently to the activities that create the most value, well, we need to affect how people take decisions. So we have to go back to the equation, so how people take decisions. And of course, you can either change how much money people make in different professions, or you change the risk in different professions, or you actually have to change the culture associated to each of the variables, so how much importance we give to each of the variables. And there are many entities that can do that. There is the government that should play a role, education, there is the private sector, there are individuals themselves. So let's see the government. Well, the government can play an important role in giving, for instance, tax breaks to industry that should be incentivized, like green tech. The government should play a big role in decreasing the risk for people that want to start their own business, to give free funding to entrepreneurs, for instance, at the beginning. Education. Education, I believe, especially in certain geographies, like UK or some schools in America, education is built because in school you don't see the alternative sometimes. When there are those career events, people think that finance is the normal choice, that they don't see the alternative. So education should create awareness of what's available there. Should also incentivize a bit more a risk-taking attitude when it comes to work, to finding a career. The private sector. So fantastic job is being done out there by venture capitalists, but more recently, there has been a boom of incubators, these organizations that help entrepreneurs get off the ground and start their own business by giving them funding, mentoring, and other resources. And then there are private individuals like Peter Thiel. He did a fantastic job this year. He started this program called 20 Under 20, in which every year he gives money to 20 people, 20 young people that have big ideas and want to do something in the field of technology to actually change how we live. But I believe that most of the impact on the equation has to come from us as individuals. I believe that the most efficient way to change the equation is changing the weight of those variables. So we should give more importance to variables that affect, like the impact that we have on humanity, rather than money. So in that respect, I would like to conclude by telling a story that I heard the first time when I was studying in America. It was my first lecture in America, and everyone was talking about money, how much someone was worth. So I went to the professor at the end of the lecture and I asked him, so why do people talk a lot about money here in America? So what's wrong with it? And he told me a story, which was really interesting. So in this story, an American tourist, go to an island in the middle of the Caribbean. And here he meets a fisherman. And he sees that the fisherman lives a strange life, according to the tourist, because he wakes up really late, goes fishing for 1 or 2 hours, gets just enough fish for the family, and then he spends the afternoon playing with kids, taking a bit of rest, the evening going to the village to see his friends. So he goes to the fisherman and says, listen, why don't you work 8 hours a day? You can fish much more. Okay, but what would I do with the fish? Well, you can save it and you can sell it, and with the savings, one day you can buy another boat and you give it to your brother, so you can go fishing together, and you save even more money, and you can buy another boat, you can have employees that... Okay, that's interesting, and so tell me more, why should I do that? Well, once you do that, you can save even more money, and you can buy bigger boats, and one day you will have a huge company. Yeah, but how long will it take? Well, 15, 20 years. Okay, and then what do you do? Well, once you have such a huge company, you go to Wall Street and you can list it on the stock market and you make hundreds of millions of dollars. Oh, okay. And what would you do with that much money? Oh, if I had $100 million, I would find an island in the middle of nowhere in the Caribbean. I would wake up late, go fishing for 1 or 2 hours. Then I would come back, play with my kids, and in the evening I would go out with my friends. So I hope that this story illustrates you what role money should play in that equation. Thank you very much. There it is.